I'm Jen Taylor Skinner, and this is the Electorette. On this episode, I have a conversation with Representative Lisa Blunt Rochester of Delaware. She joins me to discuss Women's Equality Day and the importance of empowering other women. And in the context of commemorating the 100th anniversary of the 19th Amendment, we also talk about how we can learn from our past and create inclusive movements that lift up all women. Representative Blunt Rochester made history herself in her 2016 election to Congress as the first Black woman and the first woman of color to be elected to represent the state. She was also a member of Vice President Biden's VP vetting committee, and we discussed that process as well as the strengths that Kamala Harris brings to the ticket. Lastly, we talk about what moved her to run for office herself, and it's truly a moving and powerful story, and I'm so thankful that she shared it. So without further ado, here's my conversation with Representative Lisa Blunt Rochester. Representative Blunt Rochester, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much, and I'm so excited to be here.
So when I think about the ratification of the 19th Amendment and Women's Equality Day, that passage was so crucial to what women have today and where we are today. But I can't help but imagine where we might be today had that movement been more inclusive.
Yes.
Yeah. And I think about that because we have a record number of women running for Congress, a record number of women in Congress, right? And I wonder, what can we do now as we move forward to make sure that we don't repeat those mistakes?
Jen, I think that's a perfect place to start, because I think by looking at the past, if you learn from it, you can grow. It's interesting. I've heard people talk about this centennial as not necessarily a celebration, but more of a commemoration. And it was a feat into itself. I mean, when you think about the effort and the marches and the efforts that folks made, particularly women at that time. But we also think about the fact that for many women of color, that the opportunity to vote really didn't come until the 60s. And so you think about, as you said, what could we have achieved had we been more unified then? And you can think about that and dwell on it and then say, what are the lessons learned? And I think the fact that I got elected in 2016, I came in at the same time as Donald Trump, and I had never run for anything in my entire life. And,
wow.
It was Delaware had never elected a woman. Delaware had never elected a person of color to Congress. We only have one seat. And so at the time that I decided to run, I had served in state government. I had run our urban league here. I had lived around the world and raised my children. But it was really the unexpected, tragic death of my husband, who went on a business trip, ruptured his Achilles tendon, and after playing a game of basketball before a work meeting, and then blood clots went to his heart and lungs. And it just shook me to the core. And I had to find my purpose still on this planet. And it wasn't until a year later, I felt like I was numb, just kind of going through the motions. And I started noticing other people that were, having challenges. Like in my own city of Wilmington, there was a lot of, they were talking about the gun violence. And then I saw a dad and 3 kids in a supermarket in front of me, and he had to put back a bunch of grapes because they were $9. And that shook me out of my own sadness. And I think, Donald Trump capitalized on people's anger or sadness or, the challenges they were facing. And it inspired me to run, not knowing who was going to be president or what I was going to be facing. And I think after he won and we had the Women's March, I think that was a watershed moment because it showed the possibility. I mean, the diversity of the crowd from, Black and Latina and trans and Muslim and Jewish, it was everybody there together, and people haven't let up since then. And so I won in 2016. By 2018, Emily's List, an organization that helps women candidates, which helped me, they saw a 1,000% increase in women's interest to run for office. So I do think we can learn from the past. I think we can still commemorate and celebrate, but we got to take that and turn it into action. And that's what's happening right now. And that's what gets me excited about this 100th anniversary, is that it's not just about, yay, let's celebrate this moment. It is about how do we do the work and how do we how do we change the course of history and people's lives. So yeah, I
Wow.
think it's an exciting time.
Wow, that's incredible. That's an incredible story. I'm so sorry about your husband. I
Thank
hadn't heard that
you.
story.
Yeah,
Um,
it was really, it's funny because I'm now 58 and I started as a caseworker in a congressional office for our current senator, like back 30, 31 years ago, and kind of lived my life. Had two kids. They went to public schools and HBCUs and graduated. But I also had to go through a divorce. After 20 years of marriage, and then raise these teenagers, and then become widowed. And I think that's the story of women too. We're constantly reinventing ourselves, and we're you adapt, you reinvent, and you go on to the next. And right now is such an important time for this country, and women's voices are needed now more than ever, and that's why representation matters so much.
and you're the perfect person to lead right now, because I think that the best leaders lead from their personal experiences, like the experience you had in the grocery store, right? And I was thinking about that, and I was thinking in the context, because I know you were on the committee, the vetting committee for vice president, right?
Yes.
And I was thinking about Kamala Harris and all of the boxes she checks, right? Black woman, Indian American, the daughter of immigrants, they were activists. I think that
Yes.
must have made her a stronger candidate for VP. Was that a part of your thinking in the vetting process?
First of all, I was so honored when Vice President Biden asked me to serve on this 4-person vetting committee. And, I did not take it lightly, the responsibility. And also, having run before, I think I brought a different lens to it than, maybe someone who hadn't. So, you're looking at all kind of things like you look at a Kamala Harris. She's run for president. She's been vetted. She knows how challenging it is, and she's done it on 3 levels of government. So she's run, but she's also governed, which is, really, really important. And the thing that made it exciting was that every single one of the women was more than qualified, and I always start with that, because for women, the public, they need to know these were qualified women. We have a deep bench. The thing about Kamala Harris is, as you said, she has this not only professional experience, but the lived experience, having gone to an HBCU herself, having run the largest legal operation in our country, as Attorney General in California, and the second largest in the world, but also, being that, and she doesn't call herself a stepmom, a stepmother, but, a woman. All the different experiences that go into that, I think, make her uniquely qualified. And then the fact that she actually had a personal connection to Vice President Biden through his son, Beau, who I knew very well. And even when I was in the hospital, when my husband passed away, I got a call from Beau Biden, and I didn't know at the time he was actually about to transition himself. I mean, literally, it was months later that he died, about 6 months later. So Kamala brings that relationship as well, to the connection with Vice President Biden, and I think it makes her uniquely qualified for this job. And she'll be able to make a case. I mean, she's a lawyer. She's a prosecutor. She knows how to make the case for the American people for why they are the team that needs to lead us and help us build this country back better.
Yeah. Wow. I have a quick story about her that I wanted to tell you. It's been sticking in my mind since she got this nomination, but I met her in Seattle when she was here, when she was campaigning. She was still running for president, and I was on the front row.
Uh-huh.
And I had, I just like, I'm going to talk to her at the end. I was, a huge supporter. And she came up to me and I said, I really, really want you to win, right? I really want to, do what I can. She goes, and she looked at me and she held my hands and she looked me straight in the eye and she said, I'm going to win, right?
Wow. Uh-huh.
And I believed her.
Yeah.
But later I realized, after she dropped out of the primary and after she got this VP nomination, I realized that what she was saying to me and what I saw in her eyes was the conviction of a woman and the conviction of a Black woman who'd been told too many times that she could not win.
Yeah.
That's what I saw.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
And that just stuck with me. And I connected with her and I was like, yes, I know that look. I know that feeling, because through her life, people were telling her that, all the time. You can hear it now.
Yes. Yeah. Well, it was so interesting to me, even this conversation, about ambition. And, I think for first of all, for all of those women to even get to the level that they got was there's a level of ambition that is required. But I think it's more the tenacity, it's the grit, it's the I see a bigger, greater good, and I'm going to go for it, and I'm going to contribute. And I think that that is important for all of us to see, especially in this time. And as you said, for her to look in your eyes and say that, like, didn't that feel empowering to you?
Yes.
Yeah, yeah, right, right. And I have a t-shirt that says empowered women empower women. And I think that also is symbolic of this current moment, the commemoration of 100 years of the right to vote, is that we have to empower each other. And that doesn't just mean running for office. I mean, there's so many roles that each and every one of us can play. And like right now, just before I got on the call with you, I was texting my nephew to say, "Hey, did you register? Did you get this situation straightened out?" Because of COVID, he had moved to another state. He couldn't get his driver's license, blah, blah, blah. And so it's important that we help empower each other, and even the things that don't seem huge, there's still every part is going to be important for this election.
Yeah. And in hindsight, when I was thinking about that, I think what I realized is that that's the mantra that has to go through our heads, through the heads of women and through the heads
Mhm.
of Black women and women of color to, counter that
Yes.
cacophony of voices that are telling us, we have to keep telling ourselves, we will win, we can do this, right?
Yes. Oh my God. Let me tell you, Jen, I actually, during my campaign, I remember because like I said, it had never been done. And I had never even been in a debate in my life. And I was debating lawyers. It was me and five guys in the primary. And I remember I would stand in my mirror and literally look at myself and say, you got this. You're great. You're going to do great tonight. Like, I would actually, the self-talk was so important because between the messages that you get externally, it's the stuff that's also in your head. And running for office can be a very solitary process where you're thinking of people who you thought were your friends. It's like, oh gosh, they didn't even like care to give me $5, like,
Yeah. Yeah.
or people who you thought didn't get what you were trying to do, who showed up with a pot of spaghetti or soup and said, "Hey, listen, I know you don't have time to cook, so I don't have the money to get to your campaign, but I can give you this." Like, those things count. Like, I still remember the first person who gave me $5, and she worked for I think she worked for AIDS Delaware, and I still remember that. Like, it made such a difference to me, even more than the max out person. It's like that $5, I knew how much it took for her to take the time and to give to me. And she was the first person that from Delaware that gave to me. So I think everybody that empowered women empower women is I mean, that gets me pumped. It really does. And Kamala actually, that's who. So we're both members of the Congressional Black Caucus, of course. So things are in seniority order. We march into events in seniority order. We sit next to each other in seniority order. Well, we sit right next to each other. She's right before me in seniority order. So I've had a chance over the last 4 years to spend time with her in CBC meetings as well as other events, and through this process, got to see an even deeper side of who she is and what she will bring to the vice presidency. So it's very exciting.
Wow. I have to stop and say that I'm very proud of you and what you've done in your run, and you're empowering me right now just listening to your stories.
Good, good. I tell you, each of us has a purpose. And what I learned, Charles, my late husband, I mean, this was the guy I dreamt about and wrote about in my journals when I was in a challenging marriage. And I was like, someday. And he showed up, and we had 10 incredible years together. And he was smart and sexy and funny and a cute, omega sci-fi cute. Like, he was everything. And it was a beautiful opportunity. But what I learned from that relationship. And even when he was on his deathbed, I played my song for him, which was Beautiful Surprise by India Irie. And he had his song for me was a Kim song, Kem, Kim, the artist Kim, and it was Heaven. The song was Heaven.
Oh.
It's the song we got engaged on, and we played it when we got married. And what I asked God was like, why did this happen? Like, why did I lose him? And it was just clear that we are only on this planet for one thing, and that's love, to love each other, to love ourselves, to love this planet that we are not taking care of the best that we should. And if you believe in God, to love God. When you boil it down to that, when you love somebody, you don't want them to be homeless. When you love somebody, you want them to have clean drinking water. And when you love somebody, you don't want them to be discriminated against. It's all about love. That's it. It's that simple.
It's that simple. And it's something that's so simple. Somehow the current administration, they don't get it. Yeah. I mean, there's an absence of love. There's an absence of empathy.
Yeah.
And, we have to get Biden and Harris over the finish line, right? I mean, because they don't really care about these people. And so, I was thinking about that, and I was thinking, because I saw you did an address about the post office, right? The things that are happening at the post office. And, now we have the hearing, because you were calling for a hearing. I remember that now. And so I was, this is so silly. So, we're talking about the 19th Amendment, which I think was one of the most expansive, inclusive changes. I think it enabled 26 million women to vote, I think. So it was really expansive in that sense. Right. And, now where we are now, we're trying to keep post boxes on the streets.
Yes.
And I was telling my son about that, my 8-year-old son, because he has to listen to me. I talk about politics, and he's like, oh, you're going to talk about that again. And I was saying, you can't guess what's happening now. I said, they're removing post offices and people can't vote. And he just laughed out loud at the silliness of that.
Yeah.
Right. Like, this is where we are.
It's incredible. I mean, that, to your point, we're now fighting voter suppression, voter depression. I mean, the issue of falsehoods and myths that we're going to have to counter, in terms of voter depression are immense. But it's voter suppression, depression, the Russians, the Postal Service, all of that. But I will tell you this, I do think about those suffragists, and I think about Ida B. Wells. I think about all these people that came before us, and they did not stop. They did not give up. And Michelle Obama was so inspirational to me during the convention, when she basically said, people, if you, first of all, get your ballots early. I just got my ballot in the mail, and I'm shipping that thing off this week. It's going to get out the door. But if you can't do that, if you've got to go to the polls, you take every precaution that you need to, but be prepared. Put your sneakers on, bring your bag lunch. I thought that was the best part of her speech too, because it was the call to action. And it was like, look, get your mind right, be ready, because this is about your right, your power. And so to me, like you said, it's kind of ironic that 100 years later, we're still fighting for the right to vote.
Right.
Yeah. So,
and as we move forward, we have to think about, okay, once, Biden and Harris are in office, we have to think, what can we do so that we aren't having this fight in 2024, in 2028, right? And I don't know what the solution is. I mean, do we put it in the Constitution? What do we do?
Right. Well, we actually in the House passed a Voting Rights Act, which we changed the name to the John Lewis Voting Rights Act. And I think you're right. I mean, it's sort of like these things are foundational to who we say we are as a country. And so they need to be enshrined. And I even think about why, again, it's so great to see the number of women who have come to Congress. I mean, like I said, in 2016, when I was elected, I remember Emily's List. They had, I can't even remember the exact numbers, but it was like, I don't know, couple hundred women across the country who expressed an interest in running. It might have been like 900. And then in 2018, it was like 47,000 or something. It was just, it
Right.
exploded. It exploded. And for us to have, the first two Muslim women in Congress, the first two Native American women in Congress, the oldest and the youngest women elected to Congress. I mean, it does make a difference. But then you look at like the corporate sector. So I was looking at the number of women that are CEOs, like Fortune 500, and okay, we're talking 500, right? 37 of them are women. 37. And that's a high. That's a new high. So, there's so many facets that where we still need to grow. And I think that that's the thing that has to be the focus. When Kamala said, "I accept your nomination as Vice President of the United States of America." I mean, for me, that all became very real. And I felt the weight of it and the importance of it. And I think that, again, we want to see and feel that everywhere. It is hard enough for someone like a Kamala to become the first, but we all know we want it to be the norm. We want it to be the norm. And I think that's the thing that also is motivational.
Yeah, yeah. Back to Women's Equality Day and Kamala Harris and all the things that women bring when they lead,
Hmm.
I think about all those fights that we've had and we've won.
Hmm.
Do you think that we as Democrats are making the case that women, have that political power and that they can flex that political power, in many ways, right? Obviously running for office, so many people are running for office, but, just at the ballot box.
It's interesting because I think that the way it's demonstrated is by the policies. So even when you look at the Biden agenda, I mean, the fact that there is a focus on jobs, equal pay, women, small business owners, the fact that there's a focus also on the things that help you to be able to succeed, like childcare, affordable childcare, and elder care. The fact that we're talking about in ending violence against women, these things are issues that were pushed by many groups in this country, including the House Women's Democratic Caucus. And to me, it's like put your money where your mouth is. That's what shows it. What policies are we going to do in the first 100 days? Where's the funding going to go? What choices are we making? To me, that's what demonstrates it. Paid family leave and childcare. These are issues that affect the entire family, and we know that when women succeed, our whole country succeeds. So I think that's where we're going to see it. Right now, women only hold 32% of the wealth. That is, appalling. And even in Congress, we're over 50% of the population. But when you look, in the House and the Senate, we're 24% of the House. So we're still underrepresented, but it's the highest percentage we've ever seen in the history of our country. And I think the whole point is that let's see that growth happen exponentially. Like from 2016, when I ran to 2018, it has grown. And now one of the other hats that I've been wearing is I'm co-chair for the Red to Blue program through the Democratic Congressional Caucus, tried to help flip, seats from red to blue and at the House seats. And the majority of the people that are on that list are women. And also, we have our first Afro-Latina in Candace Valenzuela. We have some incredible candidates, and I think it's a combination of that as well as school boards and city councils, and it's running for those things that are local and have real meaning to people's everyday lives, as well as what we do on the federal level. And then it's even running the campaigns. I mean, getting people more engaged in on the other side of the house, I think is another area that I've been trying to support people in like boot camps and things like that. And I feel that's part of my responsibility too, is to help create that pipeline, you know. so that we just keep getting stronger and stronger.
Yeah, I'm really excited about that. I'm glad that you're at the helm of that Red to Blue program. I am glad that you're in the House. This conversation has been so inspiring and empowering, and I'm really glad that you're leading. So thank you so much for stepping up. I appreciate you.
Thank you for having me, especially during this really, really important day and this really, really important time. And I just hope everybody will, go to iwillvote.com or whenweallvote.org or whatever website you need to make sure you have your plan. And I've been laughing and telling people, it used to be bring your kid to work day. Well, now it's take your parent or your grandparent or your uncle to the poll or to the mailbox, because we have got every single person can play a role in this major, major election, because it's a turning point for our country. And so I appreciate so much what you're doing. I've gotten to listen to, some of your podcasts and just how you're informing people, but you're also inspiring and motivating people. So thank you so much, Jen, for everything that you're doing.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.